like fighting games, but they're a bit of an enigma to me. Whereas any other game you can expect to invest hours of time into, fighting games are kind of a different beast. Some will include a sort of story mode to make single player worthwhile, but other than that, playing by yourself seems kind of pointless. So these games, at their core, are intended to be played with other people, which, oh.
You loser!
Point is, I like a lot of fighting games, purely for their aesthetics, like Clayfighters, but have no reason to actually play them, like Clayfighters. Look, I want an excuse to play Clayfighters, okay? So, here's a video. How can you not want to play this game from that intro alone? As the name suggests, Clayfighters was a fighting game released on SNES and Genesis that consisted of fighters made out of clay. The story, according to the intro, is... Not since Shakespeare has there been a more gripping tale of turmoil and strife. Oh, I get it, so it's like a circus. Yeah, there's the clown, the strongman, the fat lady, the snowman. A meteor made out of clay crash lands on Playland, an abandoned circus whose inhabitants become mutated from the meteor's clay. The roster includes Bad Mr. Frosty. Once a mild-mannered snowman, he's now grown bitter and cold. He likes snow, hates fire, and his motto? Taffy, once an unassuming glob of saltwater taffy, is ready to give the competition some sugar with his fist. Tiny, the buffest of all the fighters and master of wrestling, though clearly not the smartest as his moveset involves no wrestling whatsoever. Best beware of the blob, ladies and gents. He creeps and leaps, he glides and he slides. Made from the leftover goo of the clay meteor, he likes clay, hates hair, and will kick you in the derriere. What tournament doesn't have a good old rivalry, and folks, do we have one right here tonight? Hey wants a little less conversation, a little more action, it's Blue Suede Goo. Consumed by delusions of grandeur and fancying himself the king of rock and roll, he likes music and hates Helga. Who's Helga? Well, be patient and I'll get to that, you squirrely bastards. Helga, a mighty warrior from the north with a healthy set of pipes. She likes food, hates salad, and has no idea what she's doing in a circus. He's creepy, he's spooky, he's altogether ooky. It's Ichabod Clay, a ghost made corporeal from the meteor's impact, who likes the night and hates the day. Rounding off the list of these crazy characters of confounding caliber is Bonkers the Clown. He's a clown. That's pretty much it. You get the idea. The point is, I like characters in fighting games. It's usually what draws me to them, and this game certainly has some unique choices. This game has a lot of charm to it. It's deliberately wacky and seemingly random, but that does leave me with a few questions. Like, why are the matches introduced with animals tied to balloons? Why does the overworld map look like it's floating in outer space? Why is the timer a bomb? Why is there a samurai on the versus menu? What kind of circus has an Elvis impersonator? Why does Bonkers stage look like it belongs in a Tim Burton film? Are the lions treated humanely in this circus? Is Frosty canon with the Rankin Bass goldfish swimming around the bottom of the character select screen? And who came up with the idea of having the announcer call a timeout whenever you pause? Timeout! Because that person deserves a medal. A lot of the story information I got thanks to a downloaded PDF of the game's manual. Remember, this was back in the days when the game manual was just as much part of the game's immersion as the game itself. The back of it has this really hilarious advertisement for one of Interplay's other games, Claymates. Who's faster than Sonic the Hedgehog? Wackier than The Simpsons? Funnier than Battletoads? It's Claymates. There's just so many layers here. But that's enough waffling over the story. This is a fighting game after all. What about the actual gameplay? Well, it's pretty hard. That, or I just suck at it. Yeah, that's a possibility. Playing enough fighting games, I've come to learn that difficulty is solely measured by how often the AI blocks your attacks. And they do that a lot in this game. So I make little headway damage-wise, even when I pull off special moves. That is, whenever I can pull off special moves. I swear, half the time when I nail the button combo, they don't go off like they should. And that's me with every fighting game. I'm always too busy trying to pull off some fancy attack, but then it doesn't go off, and in the meantime, my opponent is practicing his tap dancing skills on my face. I did eventually manage to get a groove with Bad Mr. Frosty, however. See, his snowball move is back 2 forward punch, and his slide attack is just back forward punch. So, even if I screw up trying to get him to do a snowball, I'll still likely end up doing the slide attack. And that's how I managed to finally beat Helga, the first opponent in the story mode, and the furthest I've ever gotten in this game. Ichabod Clay's AI is content to do nothing but jump constantly, so I beat him by shoving my non-existent foot up his non-existent ass repeatedly. And Taffy kept spamming the same attack. Beating him just went down to luck. Tiny just straight up kicked my ass over and over, and I still can't figure out what it was about him that made the fight so difficult compared to the others.
Tiny wins the battle. Woof. Tiny wins the battle. Tiny wins the battle. Yeah.
Oh, that's it. Time to bust out the cheese.
Wins the battle.
Yeah, get wrecked, scrub. Oh no, Blue Suede Goose stage has fire. This probably won't end well.
Double KO!
Yeah, I told you. I eventually made it through the gauntlet of fighters, and it only took me less than an hour. Sadly, I had to face some reskins. I would have preferred more characters or a shorter one-player mode than having to button mash my way through the same fighter multiple times. And that's the most disappointing thing about this game. There's no unlockable fighters. You can't even play as the end boss. End boss? Wait, Mr. DNA, is that you? The name may be a play on M. Bison, but this guy sure doesn't live up to it. He's a total pushover. All he does is throw projectiles and jump around uselessly. I guess I should just be glad the game threw me a bone. And after all my effort and patience... Yeah, that's about right. And that's it. That's all the game's content. No unlocks, no special modes, no real incentive to play the single-player mode again. It's the classic video game bait and switch. They drew me in with this charming character before revealing beyond the facade was just a vacant lot full of disappointment. A lot like a real circus. Huh, bit on the nose there, guys. It's not that I'm knocking the game solely for its minuscule content. Okay, I am, but it's more that I was enjoying what was there so much that I'm left wanting more. More characters, more stages, more moves. There's a fun and wacky little universe here, and I want to see more of it. Maybe I don't know, sequel would remedy my problem. Oh, hey, look! A sequel. Clayfighter 2, or C2 Judgment Clay. I get it. Came out in 1995 on the SNES, 2 years after the original. The setting takes place in Mudville, where, after the clay meteor crashed and end boss was defeated, an enterprising mad scientist named Dr. Kiln decided to spread the clay infestation and claim himself the ruler of Mudville, or something like that. Here's the manual excerpt. It is believed that moments before this second claytastrophe began, an alien spacecraft in the shape of a prune Danish landed approximately 1/4 of a mile away from the meteor. Witnesses describe a strange man with a big head, large buggy eyes, wearing a lab coat with the inscription, "Extremely Mad Scientist Dr. Kiln," jumping out of the craft. According to one startled citizen, Dr. Kiln pressed his nose and out of both nostrils shot a big honkin' loogie. It was large and green, and struck the central portion of the meteor. The meteor instantly pulsed with a strange green glow, and began spewing forth the dreaded clay emissions. Then Dr. Kiln shouted at the top of his lungs, "I am now and will remain supreme ruler of all Mudville, and bosses no more, and just try and stop me." So now it all makes sense, I guess. Not sure if the loogie detail was necessary. I suppose after this proclamation from Kiln, fighters came out of the claywork to challenge him. Some classics are here, as well as a slew of newcomers. Unfortunately, Ichabod, Blue Suede Goo, Helga, Bonkers, and Taffy got the chop. And apparently Tiny was the canonical winner of the original tournament. Really, the California Raisin. Never would have guessed.
I'm bad. Round 1.
Oh, bad Mr. Frosty, what have they done to you? According to the manual, he's fresh out of a maximum security prison after assaulting a Mr. S. Claus. Doing time must have been rough on him. It's turned him into a tool who's just trying way too hard. Though I guess the warning signs were there. The fresh blood, or, sorry, fresh clay. No, that one didn't work. The new guys honestly aren't quite as unique as the OGs. They seem to be more on the grounded side, less wacky. Octo is just an octopus. Kangoo is just a kangaroo. Goo Goo is a baby with a spiked rattle. And Nana Man is just a banana man. I guess the most unique one would be Hoppy, the new poster child, who's a rabbit/action hero. Man, this is probably the best example of how comparatively bland these new characters are. You have a ripped bunny wearing a headband and a bandolier loaded with carrots, and they name him Hoppy. From the minds who came up with Ichabod Clay and Blue Suede Goo, Hoppy. Not the Clayminator, John Rabbitbow, Claymando, Sylvester Goulone. Okay, these admittedly aren't the best suggestions, but you get my point. I don't know, just from a purely aesthetic level, these newbies aren't doing it for me. Except for maybe Nana Man. Yeah, something about him is appealing. Kangoo's story is actually pretty tragic. She's really a kind soul with a tendency to try to treat people for injuries after beating them up. She actually attempted to quit fighting, but then this caused her fans to get violent, which forced her to continue fighting for fear that her fans were going to beat her up. That's pretty fucked up. And if you haven't noticed already, some level of detail seems to have been lost between games. The camera is zoomed farther out for starts, which shows less of the character design and more of the backgrounds. Which, yeah, let's talk about these backgrounds. What in Clay Jesus' name happened here? These have got to be the worst looking 16-bit backgrounds I have ever seen. Like, what is even going on back there? What the fuck is this? It's made even worse when compared to the original. These backgrounds are awesome, full of color and depth, and then just vomit. Pure, unadulterated vomit. I take back all my criticisms about the original's lack of content, if this is the alternative. Not that there was much more added to begin with. There's now a tournament option, and each character has their own special end boss. Don't get too excited though, they're all just reskins with a different name. So it didn't come as much of a shock to learn that this game doesn't have unlockable fighters either. Not even Dr. Kiln. He just doesn't show up at all in this game, despite being the catalyst for its story. The difficulty certainly hasn't changed though, and oddly, the one character I made the most headway with was Goo Goo, thanks to his amazing reach and accidentally figuring out one of his special moves. These controls are just so sluggish and unresponsive. The button combos would only work every once in a blue frickin' moon, so doing special moves by accident became the only way they would go off.
Hoppy wins the battle.
I will pump you up!
When he wins the Mudville tournament, Goo Goo mandates public nap times, and noise pollution skyrockets due to all the snoring. I've got nothing. It's just as lame as his bio. He's a foul mouth who likes playing pool and hits on women. I'm sure they would have included smoking cigars in there, but by that point they probably realized they weren't the only ones who saw Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Well, that was disappointing. Certainly wasn't what I was hoping for, as far as a fresh take on the series. You'd think a video game sequel would improve on everything about the original, but Clayfighters just regressed. I would have believed this was the first one. And what's worse, there's yet another game, yeah, on the Nintendo 64, called Clayfighters 63 and a Third. You know, because of all the games with the names that ended with 64. This is already a bad sign. It would have been funny enough if they just called it Clayfighters 63, but adding the 1/3 is just overselling the gag. Though I guess this series isn't really best known for its subtlety, is it? Eventually they changed it when they updated the game a year later. Wish me luck, because I'm about to get my hands dirty. Dirty with clay, alright. Now at least they prove they can still make better clay puns than me. It might just be the toxic fumes, but this game is pretty awesome, actually. This is how a sequel should be. Bigger character roster, more responsive controls, a power gauge for special attacks, claytalities, cheat codes, Earthworm Jim. Even the stage designs are a lot cleaner. Still a bit on the janky side, but I blame that more on the 64's engine not aging well. Most of the classic characters are still kicking, even after being shafted in C2. Tiny finally decided to retire, and the creators seem to be ashamed of Blue Suede Goo and Helga, but Icky, Taffy, and Bonkers are back. Icky can now possess people. Bonkers adopted a balloon poodle named Fifi.
Get him, Fifi!
And Taffy, well, he's packing heat. Speaking of being embarrassed by characters, aside from Hoppy, it seems none of the newer characters in the sequel survived Judgment Clay. What, not even Nana Man? But he was so full of potential. And potassium. The new newbies are characters that I feel more closely resemble the aesthetics of the original game. You've got a karate man / Chinese chef.
Oh, I love it, man, boy!
A voodoo man and his chicken. A junkyard dog. The Statue of Liberty? Okay, now that's just getting a bit too random.
Fortress of Fury!
Nice one! That was brilliant!
Still pretty awesome, though. Sometimes when she kicks, she lifts her dress like she's doing the can-can. And she is technically French, so either that was really clever on the designer's part, or I'm giving them way too much credit. Then you have these totem pole guys who, I don't know, seem to have an unfair advantage. Oh, come on, who approved this match? It's 3-on-1. Where's the call, ref? Oh, and look, Dr. Kiln finally decided to grace us with his presence. Once again, he's plotting to, I don't know, do mad science with clay. The story goes, on the island of Claymoto, he and the voodoo man were cooking up some mischief when a vial of his clay mutagen broke in his hand, forcing him to amputate it when it begins to have a mind of its own, replacing it with not a chainsaw. Bit disappointing. Meanwhile, the SS Manure, carrying Bad Mr. Frosty, Kung Pao, Taffy, and the Blob, capsizes near the island during a 3-hour tour. I didn't make the Gilligan's Island reference. The manual did. The variety is definitely a step up from the last couple of games. Each character has a hefty arsenal to pull from, and each one has like half a dozen claytalities to try out, which I keep forgetting is a thing.
Bring it on! You win!
Look, I'm not used to there being any sort of advanced mechanics, okay? When I do remember to activate them, they can be pretty satisfying, and sometimes just downright random.
Focus, focus!
Hoppy, big on doing magic, is he? Don't remember catching that in his bio. The controls are responsive and smooth, so much so that amidst my initial button mashing, I kept accidentally setting off various special attacks. I don't know if it's even possible, but the controls are almost too responsive. It's like a complete reversal of the first game. I swear there's times when I messed up the button combo, but the move would go off anyway. I don't know, it may have had to do with the emulator's sensitivity being jacked up or something, but I liked it. The clay cherry on top is the unlockable characters. You do unlock them through cheats only, not through playing the actual game, but just the characters alone gave me enough incentive to play a few matches and see all their moves. You've got franchise favorites, Booger Man and Earthworm Jim. Whatever happened to that franchise, I'll never know. Poor Earthworm Jim. He always had bad luck when it came to chickens. I never did beat the Earthworm Jim game, but I did get the cow to vanquish my opponent, so does that count? Then there's High Five, who I thought was supposed to be a play on Master Hand from Smash Brothers, but that can't be right since this game came out 2 years before that. Oh, I get it. He's Dr. Killen's mutated hand. He's a little disturbing though. A bit too much real gore for a game with clay aesthetics. Playing against him is also a real pain. He keeps doing this peace sign attack.
Peace, man! Peace, man!
Jumping over it places you too far away to do anything to him before he does the move again. Found the best strategy is to just keep blocking until he gets close. Which is annoying, but is a nice change of pace. It's rare that a fighting game actually requires me to change up my strategy to get past certain characters. Unfortunately, this only applies to High Five. All the other characters you can button mash your way through, no problem. But then, there's the best unlockable character in the history of all fighting games, Sumo Santa.
Jingle this all the way!
Now I know, it sounds like I'm being sarcastic, but no, dead fucking serious. Worth the price of admission right there, if I'd actually paid for it. His moveset is fun, his voice acting is hilarious, voiced by the one and only Jim Cummings.
Hey!
Blubber bump, blubber bump, blubber bump, blubber bump.
I'll never get sick of that.
Blubber!
Huh. Don't remember this scene from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Jingle this all the way!
So we finally got there. I finally feel like I got my Clayfighter fix. But, you know, there may still be another secret out there left to uncover. You know, a kid in my class once told me, if you beat the last boss without taking any damage, you unlock Wallace from Wallace and Gromit.
Let's get ready to crumble!
Happy birthday, Chuck. Cheese, 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 cheese. It's the wrong trousers.
Fatality!
That's just grand.